this one. We share our mice.
You want?
I said we share our mice, but the smoke is out. Oh, every building, come on.
No.
Yeah,
I can't.
Yes, you don't think so, but I have never lived in Manhattan without.
I want to live in my little fantasy world.
Well, you live in.
All right, are we live
We're
and
live
streaming?
And we're recording.
All right, I'm gonna convene the meeting then. Good evening, everyone. And welcome to the June 11th, 2024 meeting of the Housing and Homelessness Committee. My name is Rich Mintz and I'm the chair of the committee. Tonight, we are joined by Community Coordinator Brian Lafferty. This meeting is called to order at 6:38 p.m. Thank you for waiting. Those of you who are on, we wanted to make sure we had quorum because we have a lot of resolutions tonight. As a reminder, any committee members who are attending virtually must have their cameras on and the first and last name displayed from the time the meeting is called to order until the time we adjourn. Members of the public who are attending virtually, you can raise any questions or comments that you have through the Q&A feature of Zoom. Members of the public who are here in person, you can raise any questions that you have by raising your hand. If there's time following the committee discussion, we will feed the questions from the public. Unfortunately, we need a volunteer to take minutes tonight. If you're able to take minutes, please let us know. There must be someone here who has not done it. Have you done
I cannot.
it? You can't do it?
I'm happy to do it.
Okay.
Okay. It's easier now that we
Yeah.
have a template. Thank you. All right, we will now take attendance by roll call and Brian Lafferty will conduct the roll call.
Thank you. Committee members, when I call your name, please indicate that you're present. Nad Kalan,
Present.
thank you. Sandra Lefta,
Present.
thank you. Rich Mintz,
Present.
thank you. Aaron Roof,
Present.
thank you. Don't see Livia Shrednick. And I know Eric Goldberg and Kyle Clyde are joining us, but with 4 of the 7 members present, we have a quorum.
Excellent. Thank you everyone for coming. The agenda for tonight's minute was distributed ahead of time by the board office and is reflected on the screen before you. I would like to make one change, which is that there is a brief new business topic that Jim Collins has brought to the committee, which I prepared for last week and we didn't have time. But I'd like to put that first. He's here on video and ideally he won't have to sit through the whole meeting to do it as item 5. So if anyone has an objection to that, please let me know. And if no objection, we will turn to that topic first. The minutes from the April 15th meeting and the May 20th meeting have been reviewed, but I only reviewed them today, so they haven't been distributed. And since it's not fair to make you approve something you haven't seen, they will be considered at the next meeting. I apologize for sitting on them. So, ground rules. In order to conduct an efficient meeting, no one may speak until granted the floor. Committee members who are here in person, if you have a question about committee business or wish to make a motion, please raise your hand and I will identify you so you can speak. Committee members unable to attend in person, if you have a question about committee business, you may raise your hand through Zoom and I will identify you so you can speak. It is extremely important that only one person speak at a time so that members of the public watching at home can understand what is being said. The chat function for committee members present by Zoom should not be used for committee business or questions about agenda topics. All such remarks should be made on the record by raising your hand through Zoom. Please use chat only to alert us to technical difficulties or to state information in writing, like an email address that was already spoken aloud on the record during the meeting. So, with that, we will turn to the first topic. And Jim, after I present this, we'll promote you to panelist so you can participate in this conversation.
He's a panelist.
Oh, he is good. So Jim has brought 2 issues to us. One is the warehousing of apartments by landlords who hold them vacant as rent stabilized and don't put them back on the market. And the other is occupants of apartments that are income restricted who no longer meet the income restriction qualifications, but remain in the apartments indefinitely. And these are both politically charged topics, but there's also some substance to each of them, and so I would like to have a brief discussion of them on the merits. And think about if there's any further information we want to get or any action we want to consider taking as a committee on these two topics. And I'm gonna speak briefly first about warehousing and then about over income residents. And I want to note that these topics also came up briefly in land use 2 months ago. So it is something that has been on sort of the mental agenda of the board for a while. In terms of warehousing, landlords, building owners say that when rent stabilized apartments go vacant, they're not allowed to spend enough to bring them back up to rentable condition. If I recall, the state budget increased the amount that they can spend and recover through rents, but not significantly. According to the independent budget office, we had 60,000 empty rent stabilized apartments in the city. It's now down to about 42,000. That's out of a total of 850,000 rent stabilized units. So in the range of 5% of the rent stabilized stock. And those rent stabilized apartments in turn are about 40% of the total rental units, which I didn't know. I didn't realize that 40% of rental apartments are stabilized. And if you look at the numbers, I'm not going to present this, but I'll talk through it briefly. The total number peaked. It went up from around 40,000 in 2017 to 61,000. 62,000. It appears to be down to around 42,000 now. Most of these rent stabilized apartments are held empty for less than a year. You're looking at this bar graph, it's in the range of 80 to 90%. But it's not nothing. And while those apartments are vacant, whatever the motivation is, they're not occupied and they're not available to deal with the housing crisis. So that's one of the two topics. Sandra, is there something that you want to speak?
To say on that, yeah. So my first question is, where'd you get the data from?
These charts came, I believe, from the independent budget office, but I have.
Is that the city?
No, it's a nonprofit, but I have the sources.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's really important because I'm pretty sure I sent maybe to you, Brian, an article that the city ran, which was excellent research.
Yeah.
Conflicting, it does not have your data. It has much more damning data.
Okay,
And so, we want to get.
so these numbers might be low.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
They're really, that would be highly contestable. And we know that the landlords have real issues for warehousing these apartments and, if they can put two together, they've made it and so
Yeah.
on. So we want to be very careful. I know it was in our original proposal.
Mhm.
So in fact, we have discussed that
Yeah.
and felt that it was a real issue.
Mhm.
So I thank the person who brought it
It's Jim
up.
Collins, yeah.
Thank you, Jim Collins, because this needs to be addressed.
Yep.
You're welcome.
And I want to meet you in person soon, or maybe. But this is a really important issue that landlords, I put it differently than you did, can get away with this.
Yeah.
With the claim that they can't afford it.
Yeah.
That's very convenient.
Yeah.
All right. And we know that they can, increase this, the whole thing, well, I'm not gonna go into all of it, but the way
Yeah.
they finagle with money is very convenient. I'm rent stabilized. I know
Well,
the game only too well.
Yeah,
And it's painful almost to see what happens. We could do the other one about they get rid of us, but we're not gonna do that.
yeah,
So I think we need real data that is validated and then we go from there. So, that's my opening of, it
okay.
ain't 40,000.
Yeah.
Rich,
Go
the
ahead,
number,
Jim.
Rich, the numbers I sent you showed that when the legislature abandoned the vacancy decontrol, the number of vacant units basically doubled. And the
Yes, I
reason
see
for
that,
that
yeah.
is, it's
I see
basically
that.
economics.
They doubled in
You-
2021, then they dropped in 2022, but are still higher than they were in 2020.
Yeah. and the reason for that is people take apartments in some instances, they're there for 20, 30, even 40 years.
Yeah,
And the fact is the occupancy at the continued, the rent that is given by the Rent Stabilization Board simply isn't sufficient to meet the ongoing cost of occupancy.
yeah,
And that's just basic economics. But I think it's something that needs to be addressed. The legislature may have had every good intention, but we all know what happens to that when you go on that road.
Yeah.
And I think that probably vacancy decontrol, maybe they should put some kind of capital expense allowance in vacancy decontrol. In other words, maybe in addition to the rent stabilization guideline number, if an apartment is being renovated for new equipment, new cabinets, new bathroom, whatever, that the landlord be allowed some cost recovery of those costs over time and over preferably a limited amount of time.
you mean
4 or 5 years
you mean at the time of vacancy?
at the time of vacancy, right?
Allowed recoverable
Right.
allowance. Okay, so that's something that we should keep in mind. I think what I'm gonna propose is that we put all the numbers together to look at a more comprehensive picture of the problem. And the various arguments pro and con, and then have a substantive discussion about what we might do about what we might propose doing about warehousing.
Okay.
Before I go on to go ahead, Jim.
Yeah, the second issue that we had discussed is occupancy of affordable housing.
Yeah, I'm gonna turn to that now.
Okay.
I think, yeah, one thing I would say on like the first topic,
Yeah.
I think it's worth getting the data from Jim because you're like the 40,000, if all of them turn over, like 90% turn over in a year,
Yeah,
it doesn't seem like the biggest issue, candidly, right? Because it's like 4,000-ish are being warehoused. Like I feel like a year is kind of okay for like them trying to find a new tenant. But if
Yeah.
the numbers are higher, to Jim's point, it definitely seems like it's more worth their time.
I mean, I do
Right.
agree that like 5% is a number that I understand the market needs to hold some open for turnover, but if it's 10%, it's a much bigger problem.
Yeah.
Also, you wanna know where they're holding it?
Yeah,
Right, what part of the city?
yeah,
And I
sure.
would include this, the journalist from the city who did all of that groundwork on, and is independent from whatever, it's another source of
Yeah,
data.
it's
So I
true.
think that should be someone we want to.
And those people would be happy to talk to us if we
Yeah,
want more
they-
information than is in the story. Because they're really, if it's the housing reporter I'm thinking of, she's really, if it's the housing reporter at the
There's
city,
also a mail in there.
Okay,
I've been in contact with, so.
okay.
and
All
they
right.
know fundings.
Jim, if you don't mind, can we turn to the income question?
Sure,
Okay,
sure.
so,
This is the, oh, you want to take the lead or I take the lead?
yeah, I can give you my summary points and then you can talk.
Okay.
Cause I read through your stuff. The idea is that there are people who move into an apartment when they qualify for an income restricted apartment and then their income rises. And the thresholds are low, like, I know the city's expensive, but even if you look at a 30%, if you look at a 30% AMI apartment, the income threshold is 38,000. And the full-time minimum wage income, someone works 40 hours at minimum wage, it makes 32,000, which is only a little below that. If they get a couple of small raises, if they get raised to $20 an hour, they're over income. And those are not the egregious cases, but there are some egregious cases that the HUD audit found, and a New York City audit found that there are 160 low-income apartments in New York City that are rented by people who are now making over 100,000. And even separate from that, we've got tens of thousands of rent stabilized apartments in the city that are rented by people who could afford to pay significantly more than they pay, especially rent controlled apartments. I'm not sure if there's any recourse for that, or even if it's appropriate for there to be recourse, but it is something that's worth discussing. Jim, is there anything else you would want to bring up as we talk about this?
Well, just the HUD audit was with respect to NYCHA, which is a separate issue.
That was just NYCHA, that's right. And they found
the
25,000 over income families out of about 1 million.
Right, and the NYCHA has no policy in place to evict over income tenants.
Yeah.
So they found a number of people who were substantially over income, and NYCHA refused to evict them. In the meantime, we have people sitting on sleeping in shelters and hotels. The point I would make about the affordable housing units, which is a separate category, is that we create affordable housing, and it's much like how can I say, if you had, for example, if you have financial aid that goes to a number of students from a college, there's a set pool of financial aid, right? What's happening now in many instances is you have people who are basically Bill Gates kids receiving financial aid, and it shouldn't be happening that way. And we've set these apartments aside. We're building even more of them, but we're making no provision for any kind of a cap. Yeah. And I would propose that we do something on the order of a 5-year check of their average income, or perhaps maybe their mean income, because somebody can have a really good year, and then have their income reduced. But if someone's significantly over income in a particular year, and we can set up a data point where their income, where it's clear that they're able to afford an apartment other than the rent, the affordable unit, then we should make provision for some kind of eviction, or perhaps have them pay a higher rent so that the higher rent can go to the benefit of people who cannot afford.
Yeah, I mean, one thing Eric Goldberg proposed is that the income restricted apartments become fungible, so that if someone's income raises significantly above the income restricted level, that one could come out of income restriction, and a different apartment in the same building could become income restricted when it was vacant. I'm gonna call on Sandra, and then I'll call on you next.
Two issues. My understanding was in NYCHA that when someone's income went up, then the cost of the apartment went up proportionally, always keeping it to 30%, which was.
I don't actually know.
Well, that is what I have learned. So this is news to me that they keep it, they can't get people to pay. So that's two very different models, at which point, and I don't know, that's when I saw this as an agenda. I thought, well, why aren't the same NYCHA rules applying to these apartments? Of course, you've also got aging in place here. Yeah. Right. So you don't want to replace the finance.
It's a sensitive topic.
Yeah, but I would think that the NYCHA issue has to be confirmed, because that really is my understanding is that they check. Jim, so you're raising it, and you seem to think that the rent was frozen, but and not adjusted to raising income. Just, is that the case as you understand it, or is that to be really, we need to research?
As I said, there was an audit done by the HUD Inspector General. Now it's several years old. It was done, I believe, in 2015.
Okay.
But
there's no reason to think the problem magically disappeared.
No,
No,
but I think like
no.
the city council is gonna.
Yeah.
Certainly,
I mean, it is-
Bear is gonna know.
It is worth our doing some research to find more detailed numbers. And also to see what other agencies in other cities do in this situation, both in the US and in other
But I
places.
think the easiest is
Yeah.
all NYCHA.
Yeah, but
Because
starting with
NYCHA
NYCHA is
is,
part of it, because NYCHA is a million apartments. Go
Yeah.
ahead, Jim.
The HUD Inspector General found, I believe, that the income was in the order of $300,000 or $400,000 for the family. And when that was their worst case, but there were, I think they found something like 20% of the residents were over income. And when they raised it with NYCHA said they have no provisions for evicting over income. So that's, it's a fixed base, it's a fixed pool
Yeah,
of assets that we're not allocating properly. That's the bottom line. And you end up having needy families living in shelters.
Yeah.
And that shouldn't be the case.
so hang on one moment, I'm gonna call him Carol.
Okay, I'll do it.
Yeah,
There are people who.
You can come up to the podium if you please.
Please.
we'll translate for the people on.
Oh, all right. There are two questions. The first is, are assets counted? For example, you can be making
Yeah.
$20,000 a year and have $1 million in stocks. Is that, and that's.
Yeah, the question is whether assets are counted in affordability, and I don't know the formula by which they're taken into account either for NYCHA or for income restricted.
Right, and then
Yes, they
the
will.
second thing-
Well, if I can answer that as it comes up.
Yeah,
When we do the FAFSA, the financial aid forms that we do for students, they do take account of assets. So if we can take that as a comparable, as I related in my earlier discussion, then yeah, we should take account of assets.
yeah. You had another
Just
point?
one.
Yeah,
I'm a writer. I can earn $10,000 one year, 1,000 the next. How do you account for the possibility that there could be a year when somebody makes $80,000
Yeah.
a year and the next year it's $5,000?
my income also goes up and down, and I think we would need some sort of income averaging.
Okay,
to
so it
make
would-
sure.
it would-
Yeah.
It would
Yeah.
not some.
Yeah. Jim, you're also a
I
consultant, so
suggested
you
a
understand.
5-year. I suggested a 5-year income
Yeah.
average, a rolling average, so it would be the most recent 5 years.
Yeah. You had a comment?
Yeah, I still get NYCHA and Section 8 confused, but I've worked with the Section 8 side.
Yeah.
And that was if the income went up, they always had to pay 30% of their income. So
Right.
if their income went up, they're paying more. It's not that the rent stays the same.
Yeah.
So it's exactly.
Yeah,
So-
that's my guess is that.
Section, yeah, Section 8 is an example of a way to handle it in a way that floats according to the income. All right, well, I mean, I think we should,
And you did have to report assets in some of the apartment applications.
Okay.
In addition to income.
so if no one objects, let's plan to come back to this at our next meeting with more detailed information, including statistics from other sources, to make sure that we are looking at accurate numbers of about warehousing, and to look at how other jurisdictions handle the over income situation.
And also how nitrous actually handled.
And how not, and actually. All right. Thank you, Jim, and thanks for doing the first round.
Rich, thanks for accommodating me so early. I
Sure.
much appreciate it.
Sure.
All right,
All right,
take care now. Bye-bye.
all right, bye. Sounds like we're about to lose Jim. All right, so why don't we move on to the next item of business on the agenda, which is the consideration of a resolution making a favorable recommendation on the proposed city VS for housing opportunity zoning text amendment. And as context here, let me open the resolution here in front of me. You see it up there too. We as a committee voted 4-1 to make a favorable recommendation in our previous meeting, and land use voted 7-0 to make a favorable recommendation. That was after the formal presentation by DCP and their response to, according to Majed, who kept count, their response to all of the questions that we raised in the resolution that we passed in early May. And this resolution isn't just a favorable recommendation. It's a favorable recommendation with specific comments about the things that we find most problematic about the language, including some that are carried over from our earlier resolution and a couple that have been added based in part on research that George James did into the details of the zoning text amendment. Majed read through this and made a couple of changes to make sure that he felt that land use would pass it. Sandy read through it and recommended a couple of changes, which we made. Just to quickly run down what the discussion points are that we left in here. One is 1 and 2 together are changes to setbacks and yard requirements that might have light and air impacts. There was changes to minimums. There is a provision in the proposal for loosening bulk and height restrictions on buildings that already exist so that they could add on, which would be a surprise. And in both of these cases, we proposed subjecting changes like these to community review. We are still somewhat concerned about the floor area transfer from landmarks to buildings in their general vicinity because we don't want surprise height and bulk popping up in places where you don't expect it, that's far from the transferring property, because the zone landmarked properties can transfer to is much larger under the proposal than it currently is. It could be at several square blocks. And we're asking again here for community review of those transfers. And we're also proposing that those transfers require some income restricted units, because right now they don't. We have reiterated our position that places like Skytown, large residential open space districts are important, and that the need to keep that space open for community use is important. And I want to talk about this in a minute after I get through number 5. And then number 5 is university affordability preference, the new mechanism for encouraging affordable housing is too loose. It's not loose in the sense that it's not likely, we fear it's not likely to incentivize as much income restricted housing as we would like it to. And we propose that it be sweetened to make it more favorable, so that people who build housing will actually use it. The main sweetener right now is the 485X, which is the new 421A. And DCP was very clear in their discussion at land use, that they saw the affordability preference and 485X as being hand in hand. They said they pushed very hard for 485X because this wouldn't work without it. But we want to make sure that we get as many incremental units due to the universal affordability preference as we can. And then the only other thing that I want to mention before we open this up for discussion is that Majed and I agreed to put a provision in here that calls on the legislature to protect people more strongly against displacement when redevelopment happens, and to guarantee that families who are displaced get accommodated at their existing rents in comparable housing. Because we don't want someone to come in and say, oh, well, you know, I have a 10-story building, I can now build a 15-story building and then throw everybody out to knock the building down. So I have a bit more to say about Stuytown, but before I do, and before I open it to discussion, I would ask Sandy McKee, our chair, who's here as a guest, if there's anything specific you would like to raise.
I will say that I attended a conference this morning that was about city of housing, and there was a presentation by the city planning, there was Dan Rodman. There was substantial discussion, and there was a representative of a developer who mentioned that 425X.
485X, yeah.
485X actually requires market, or it requires the wages to be, I forget.
Oh, the prevailing wage,
Prevailing wage,
yeah.
Plus it has to be fully documented. They said it's not gonna pencil out to allow this to be a viable system to encourage housing. So in a way, it reiterates what we've
What
said.
we're saying, yeah.
What we've said. And there was also discussion that actually city zoning doesn't make things happen.
Mhm.
It doesn't create
Yeah.
affordable housing. It allows mechanisms to take place that it can have.
And so if the mechanisms are not sufficiently rational for builders to take advantage of, they won't.
And so in a way, what we need is an accompanying tax incentive or some kind of incentive that's government in place that allows this to happen.
Right, what we proposed here is that we give them some incremental market rate units along with the affordable housing.
And maybe we don't want to be specific. Maybe you want to say we need incentives
Okay,
because it's always hard.
Yeah.
To do that. And we talked also about info in places such as Stuyvesant Town. And I might recommend we limit it to our district, just because,
you mean don't mention other places?
yeah, because there are lots in the city,
Yeah.
probably. We happen to know about some that George James has
Yeah.
alerted us to, but it's a complicated issue.
Yeah.
And it looks like info housing, there's many benefits to it, but it's more about the 40-foot versus
Yeah,
the 60-foot that I think that's being difficult for us.
do you, before we go on, do you feel like the issues of light and air and setbacks, the first two are addressed?
I think,
Yeah,
yeah, I think
here.
it's great.
Okay.
I completely agree with all the documentation. Those were the only two that after today's meeting had some, there was a little more nuance.
They came up, yeah.
Yeah.
So we, just to put in the parking lot, we might want to make a couple of minor changes to this resolution in response to the things you're saying. But let's see if we have any discussion first. Do you have your hand up or you just?
No, yeah. My first question is, who were the main people there? Was it mostly developers who were presenting?
No, it's the American Institute of Architects. So it was a presentation to architects who deal with housing on a,
Okay.
and actually designing within these rules. So the first presentation was by Dan Gronick. I'm sure it's been a very long day, so I can't remember all of the names, but the Foreman Institute, which is out of NYU.
Oh,
Furman,
Furman, yeah,
Furman.
Furman Center, yeah.
Yes, Furman Center was there, had some very good, and they're willing to come and talk to us, actually.
Oh, Fern Center would be.
We
good.
had someone from there a few years back. It's time to have
Yeah.
another.
Two other groups, actually, there was a total of six, there were two panels, and you definitely supportive of more housing.
Okay. My hesitation with all this is because real estate is such a significant lobby in the city and the state, and they did get that 421A, which is such a giveaway, and citizens paid for all of that housing. I'm very skeptical when we start talking, let's throw them some more bones, because we knew what happened to 421A. So that's when I ask, I want to know who's there, I want to know the data, because this is
Right.
such a loaded issue.
And I think the major discussion was that the city is not providing the money to build housing, so we unfortunately must rely on the private market. And there was, it very informative, like if there's probably only 10 affordable housing projects can be built a year by an HPD. That it's the maximum they can produce. So the rest has to come from somewhere else.
Oh, you're saying that they can build 10 fully affordable ones with public funds,
Programs, right, so
and anything else
Anything
has to be
else.
incentivized.
Right. And those are with not-for-profit.
Okay. Just for clarity, Brian, do we have any committee members on video? Okay. Does anyone else have any?
Oh, go ahead.
It was the very last paragraph
Yes,
on displacement.
yes,
Like when I think of people being displaced, they're often getting displaced outside of their neighborhoods, if not the borough they live in. So
Yeah.
I was just thinking it'd be important to say something around location and at least helping them just.
I'm sorry, which number are you working with?
the very
Oh, the
last.
very last
result
one.
at the
The
bottom.
infill? No,
No, even lower. On the second page.
It's on the screen too.
no, it's all right. I'm just trying to, I'm a little mixed up with what I got here. All right, I'll look on the screen fast.
Yeah.
Okay,
So it says families displaced for redevelopment be accommodated in comparable housing at comparable rents. But we would like for them to stay in the same neighborhood, in the same school, same commute, right? And
We have a consensus of the members around the table that we should add the words in the same neighborhood.
yes.
How about community?
Community.
Yeah.
Community is good because it's a bit looser, but meets the spirit.
oh, that was very easy.
Yeah. I mean, this is the way you're supposed to run these meetings, get everyone to agree on things. Okay, so the two top, go ahead. Someone was talking? Did I step on you? No. So the two things that Sandy proposed that we do is one, we eliminate the references in item 4 to group houses and Washington houses. We just mentioned Stuyvesant Town and Tudor City, which are the ones in our district. Do we have a consensus that
Yes.
we could?
Actually, I have a lot, before we start
Yeah,
getting
yeah.
into that, I would really like to bring up some issues. about it,
Broader
because I was
issues, yeah.
not here last
Yeah.
time. And I guess I'm gonna bring it up. Well, let's see how I'm gonna bring it up. I realize that there are 2 issues here. One is, it's about developing more housing, it's developing more affordable housing.
Yes.
Right? And of course, my interest is about affordable
Yes.
housing, as you may have guessed. I'm a little disturbed that whatever we raised last time and we put in here as a committee is gone from the new proposal. That really makes me uncomfortable. So we put in here loss of existing housing, warehousing, vacant rent surplus. I know you explained that it's a state issue and not a city issue. But I'm very concerned that gets pulled out, one. The next thing that gets pulled out is housing diversity. It's gone. So if we're talking about affordability, why do we take that out? Because I think that's major. And I have some, more comments to it. Then we took out the second part of that, with constraints on net growth, the recommendation to decrease apartment size should not be done at the expense of meeting housing needs of larger families. Again, I'm looking at a document that I hope does not create further class and race-based issues.
Mm.
Right? And
Yeah.
you eliminate certain things and you're looking at class-based issues. The smaller, so I'm concerned that all of that got wiped out.
Well, we
Right.
can walk through those items one by one and talk about how DCP responded if we want.
I don't care how DCP responded because I thought we want to develop our own statements, not what DCP did. And DCP did a couple of things that I was very troubled about at the meeting. I asked 2 questions, both of which really troubled me. One is, where do you get your data on the diversity of family size?
Yeah,
They want to do
the
all these
human
little,
Yeah.
little cubbies. We know that they're all, so the answer was, we know that there are lots of single people coming in. Well, how do you know that? I want to know your source of data. They couldn't be bothered answering that. I found that very troubling. And the other part that got buried, but it's helpful to hear this part, was what's the incentive? The incentive for developers.
Mhm.
It was like I said, God, they're philanthropists. I had no idea, which was really, I was touched. I thought I shouldn't say bad things anymore. But the point was they buried the incentives, and that makes me uncomfortable. So are they above board? My response is no. So I'm not here to, cater to city planning. That's government. I think we should be doing what we believe in, what we feel are real issues. So I don't need to go back to city planning. I think that was your point. We should check it out. No, why can't we?
No, I was just saying we could recap the way that they responded to the issues that we raised.
Oh, that's fine, but okay, that's fine. But what I'm saying is I would be skeptical about necessarily what I heard, right? I'm not a big believer in, city governments telling me the truth. I'm sorry, but
Yeah.
I don't, right?
Yeah.
So whatever their response is, fine, but does that deal with the issues of diversity that you have? Okay, fine. I made my point.
Yeah,
Now
yeah,
you
no,
make
it's
that
fine,
yours.
it's fine.
Okay.
It's fine. Oh, did you have your hand up?
No.
Okay. I mean, one thing we could do is to just say in here that we reiterate all the concerns that we raised.
Why was it dropped in the first place?
Because it's a different resolution. It's not a,
I understand you redid it, but why'd you drop that? I can still ask, it's a fair question, right? You took off.
I attended the land use meeting where Rich
So
was
did
in
I,
it.
right?
But no,
Oh, the next one.
the next one,
Okay.
and the consensus of the committee was that those questions had been answered in a way that they felt was acceptable. So
Yeah.
that's why it was taken.
Okay, fine, and I was at that meeting with city planning, and I did not feel it was addressed at all, quite honestly.
So that's where the.
Okay, I get it.
Yeah.
But then we're responding to what land use did, as opposed to what we were thinking, right? So we're doing.
that's true.
Yes,
Okay,
okay.
we can have our own opinions.
Okay,
It's
all
a
right, good.
joint, resolution between the two committees.
Okay.
So if you want to put those back in and just to say, as per our previous discussion, we have these
That's it.
issues.
Okay, good.
You can, it's really, it's just
I mean,
the land use felt that those items had been addressed.
The reality is that land use will probably vote for whatever we send.
Very flexible.
I mean, no, but I mean,
Yeah.
we're materially in agreement between the two committees about what the issues are. And I believe that based on the participation of the chair in this meeting, it's the chair's opinion that other members of the board will also be materially agreed.
I must say that in every one of these panel discussions that you go to tend to reinforce the numbers that city planning has given us and the sort of description. So the fact that city planning hasn't given us, a more detailed data analysis is unfortunate, but I must say, everything else seems to reinforce what they've been.
You mean things like the fact that, the shortage is in smaller apartments rather than larger apartments, that kind of thing?
Yes.
And that the reason we have a shortage of larger apartments is that individuals
Right.
move into them as groups.
And there's also, like, through zoning, we do a dwelling unit calculation. And it dictates that you can't have small, you can't do an all studio building. It's verboten in the zoning.
And that won't change.
Well, no, it will, because the new city of yes will get rid of that.
Oh, I see, yeah.
So, it allows more flexibility in what sizes you can have. And they said, it was done in the 1960s. We've changed. The idea of family has changed. So, and it allows, group living, which again is not allowed in the current zone. So it's something they're taking out to try and give more flexibility.
I guess the part that I heard in that was about, there were a lot of young professionals coming and they need these smaller apartments. And that, in the dense area, which, makes Manhattan an area for young professionals of a certain class, economic class. And my hope was that we're gonna do this, we're gonna bring people of the diversity of New York City who also have the right not to travel an hour or an hour and a half on the subway every day. But that's not how it came out, right? And that was very disturbing.
And the other thing is, the idea is if you provide single apartments for young professionals, they don't take over a 3-bedroom apartment. That a family would be renting. that's one of the problems they see that has been solved.
Right, but that's the trickle down of it. It's not that they're developing it for those families. We hope that those folks will move out of those apartments, making, but in the chain of it, the emphasis is not on creating a diversity of apartments with a diversity of citizens living in. That's what I heard.
Yeah.
And there was a city planning report, like their description of how unit breakdown would work was much more complex, which I unfortunately don't. But it was one of the items that we actually thought at land use basis.
Yeah, I mean, they did make clear that, I think this is what you were talking about, there will still be rules about how you are allowed to break up your space. And the other thing they made clear is that, the affordable units that are mandated are in the same proportion of sizes as the building as a whole. So like, if it's, the building as a whole is 20% 3 bedrooms, the affordables also have to be 20% 3.
Yeah. Do they also have to be 20%, if 20% or 30% of the AMI, they have to be, of those 2 bedrooms, they have to be 30% at the, if they have, if 20% is 20% it's a 30% AMI, then 20% of those 2 bedrooms have to be 30% of the AMI.
I think the 20% applies to the average AMI and not the individual.
Yeah, that's right. So you gotta be very careful about that, because they can hand over all the studios, whatever, at the 30% AMI, shift over the larger apartments at the
Sure.
higher, and that's,
Sure.
and that we don't want.
It's
Right.
true,
Okay,
it's
so,
true, that could happen.
yeah, so we wanna make that clear.
Yeah.
Okay.
Did you have a comment?
Well, yeah. I don't know how many of you know that Buchanan was completely remodeled. USA bought the building and came in and changed all the apartments. They put in an extra bedroom in places where 2-bedroom apartments became 3 bedrooms, 1-bedroom apartments became 2. The residents now, with those apartments, I think somebody hit on, in the 2-bedroom apartments, there were 3-bedroom apartments, there would be 3 25 or 30-year-olds, because the apartment is $8,000 to $9,000 a month. And there is,
I didn't hear.
the apartment, the 3-bedroom apartment can be as high as $8,000 or $9,000 a month. And very few families are going to move into the rental from that. And as far as what used to be the 1-bedroom apartments that are now 2, they are $4,000 a month. So the idea that you can keep apartments to one family or one person goes away as you raise the rent. And I think that one of the things that goes on here that is not really addressed is that 20 years ago, New York began to move from a rental, or at least Manhattan, began to move from a rental site to an ownership site. And today, after Buchanan, it is essentially a hotel where people come in, take a 2-year lease, and then buy an apartment. And I think that more than everything that Dan was doing, what drives what's going on is the price of the apartment. Somebody say yes or no.
No, I absolutely think you're right about that. I don't know what we do about that,
Nothing,
Yeah. No.
there is nothing you can do.
but zoning can't fix that, right?
Well, no, zoning cannot fix that. What will fix it is when, the turnover is so great that, well, what will fix it is if the people who own what's left of the rental buildings, and those are fast disappearing. If you walk around Fair Bay and take a look at what is now the ownership of the rental buildings, it's quite stunning. And as the rental buildings disappear, things will change. But this is all driven by money.
Yeah.
Sorry.
But back to our resolution.
Yeah.
Back to our resolution.
Yeah, oh, well, I'm gonna.
I mean, we could discuss this forever, but, what would you like to do as the housing committee? Do you want to add back some of the, can we call up the previous resolution and just see?
Yeah.
And we're really only talking here about the affordables that they get when they, right, on that resolution, it's just.
So affordability is the
It's,
concern.
no,
area.
it's it's the affordable apartments.
Yeah,
I have one quick question. So is everything that's gonna go up, it's everything they changed the F11
Yeah,
to F12. I don't know.
yeah,
so
yeah.
14. And so they get extra. So every one of those changes, whatever they increase it by is affordable? Or is there some increase in size that's not that doesn't fall under affordability?
There are two things. One is that the builders can get a bonus of more. They can build bigger essentially if they add some affordable units.
Right,
That's separate. The other thing separately is that, the FAR cap has been liberalized, meaning that the city, if it wants to, can at some future time designate zones where people can build more densely.
and that has nothing to do with affordability, that's market rate stuff.
That's market
Or-
stuff,
or-
but Sandy has the clarification.
Once you rezone,
Yeah,
you must do MIH.
okay.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
So you-
It's kind of
got it.
any major rezoning now must do MIH.
Okay, so if people, if a developer wants to take advantage of that increased density, they will have to include some affordable.
Well, it's going to, again, we're not absolutely positive because there's no F12.
Yeah,
Right, FAR12 zones, but it's a rezoning, so. That's the way things have been going in the city currently, is any
Yeah.
major rezoning requires MI.
and there would be a lot of social pressure to continue that if they.
Exactly. They
Okay,
haven't done any of these yet.
So the only thing we're really talking about is this, the person wants to build bigger. And so then they have to make all that stuff affordable.
20%.
Only 20% of what they build bigger, no.
If this is under this proposal,
Yeah,
if you're going to add, if you make your building 20% bigger, you must provide
20%.
UAP,
yeah,
20%.
and that's all then determined with, INH.
And if you make it 30% bigger, could you make it 30% bigger, or you can't, no, it has to be 20% and then you do 20% bigger. Okay, great, thank you.
What's MIH?
mandatory inclusionary housing,
Ah,
income restricted
I'm
housing.
sorry, I grew up during Vietnam.
I was not.
Yeah.
gonna
All I
guess
could think of
that.
is missing in action.
Let me tell you, I am old enough to remember that.
Every time I
Yeah.
hear MIH, I can only think of MIA. I'm sorry, you can tell my age.
So, there are a couple of, so this is the old resolution.
Yeah.
And the question is there anything specific here that we think is important to resurrect? And include as a concern in our new resolution? And let's look at these one at a time. The first one is,
It was two,
pardon?
it was two where we started adding, right? Oh, you're doing this new one or the old?
This is the old one,
This is the old.
the one we already passed. Where
Okay,
you,
go on.
where you,
Yeah,
where
where I
you,
was
yeah.
38.
yeah.
All right, go.
So the first item is that we want, income restricted, income distributed affordability. Which, I mean, honestly, it sounds like it would be so complicated that we probably couldn't get it. But I don't know, I mean, I guess Sandy, I'm interested in what your opinion is about this particular item. The idea that,
Again, I'm not sure it's something zoning can do. I don't know.
it would make the UAP. Well, yeah, I mean, how would they administer it? They would have to, they would have to have like a department that went into census level data.
They could do it. Right, I mean,
Yeah,
that's doable.
they could. So that's one item.
Permanent sentiment.
Yeah.
So I'm happy to work on this.
The second item is where we talked about, warehousing and replacement of lost units, and they basically said this is rentalization is a state issue, we have no control over it. Which honestly, I think it's an issue that we should take up. But I don't
Who
think
said
I'm
that? I'm sorry. That
DC
was-
a DCP. Cause they don't deal with, you know, the management of rent stabilization. That's a different the state agency. I mean, they deal with individual projects, but not with the system as a whole. Housing diversity, we were just talking about, and Sandy, I think your sense is that it's accommodated essentially in the momentum of the system,
I think so.
based on the presentation you had today.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, all the housing groups that were there felt this was it was a good direction for
Diversity.
Okay, but, and I said, that's a trickle down theory, right? And to not say it any place up front, I find very troubling, and to hope it will work out, but to ignore the fact that we really do not meet the needs of families living in Brooklyn and Queens, and these folks who can, you know, it just seems that it has to be in people's, you know,
I would,
in their consciousness, not in their hope.
I would not object to adding another item to our pending resolution that said that the proposal should encourage the construction of a diversity of apartment sizes. In other words, we're repeating this existing first sentence from the old resolution.
And then, that reflects the diversity of family size in the city, right?
Yeah.
So, that needs,
I'm okay.
yeah, I don't know about the rest of it.
I'm okay retaining the sentence. Brian, are you willing to move it over and we can see what it looks like?
My only question will be exactly where.
Let's look at
It
the,
was a topic called housing diversity.
Yeah,
It's its own topic, so we
yeah,
can
I think it's.
put
its
it
own
back,
topic.
and I think the
Let's see
notion
where it goes.
makes it visible.
He's switching, now we can't see what you're looking at.
And one of my concerns, again, is that in general, the notion of affordability gets
Yeah.
marginalized relative to development of apartments. And I think we need to be more upfront that we're talking about, you know, there's a real need for affordability and in Manhattan.
I would put this at number 2,
Okay,
after number 2, as the new number 3. And let's read it.
no, I thought that we're, and as for example, because then you're making it, I would prefer it with some data and with some indication of what we're talking about.
With the, you want to include, keep the example. Yeah,
Because
I
that
don't-
makes it clear that what we're
I
talking,
don't object.
anybody?
Yeah, I think the example's fine.
Okay.
Okay. Now we flip back to the old resolution to make sure we go through the other items. We're making you work today, Ron. So, constraints on net growth, this,
Did you say that?
We're back at.
we're back at the old resolution.
Yeah,
No, I understand.
so we already copied the housing.
Yeah, it looks like you didn't deal with this issue of, permitting smaller, apartments. You don't deal with it in the new resolution, right?
No,
I think it went away as an issue.
it went away.
Then
as
it
an
goes,
issue.
it's,
Yeah.
okay. Then you don't need to.
Floating FAR is in the new resolution and infill housing is in the new resolution.
So the affordable housing, affordable housing is a statement here? No. So you dropped affordable housing. Why did we drop a clear statement about affordable housing as a part of our resolution? Again, your emphasis is on not affordable housing issues. Why did we drop the affordable housing issue? See, the first one is
Yeah, yeah.
affordable housing.
I'm reading it.
Yeah, so it seems to me it should be back in there,
Um,
because that is getting, I'm afraid it will be
I'm,
pushed to the side,
I'm,
yeah.
I mean, we do call for, in the new resolution, additional income restricted housing, for instance, in the landmark transfers.
But income restricted housing is not the same as, necessarily the same as affordable housing, right? Income restricted,
Income restricted housing is the only tool that zoning has available to create affordable housing.
Right.
UAP, right?
right, and I'm a little confused. So, but this income restricted had this thing, if your income goes up too much, you lose the apartment?
No, we don't have that now. That's what we were talking about earlier.
I
That-
think, I don't know, but I don't think so.
No, I'm sure it does.
Yeah.
We would know. Once you're in, you're in.
Okay,
Um,
So. Income restricted housing is,
this is our new resolution.
is in the new resolution.
Is it?
is
Let me
it,
see,
where is
yeah.
it?
It's number 6.
I'm
So
sorry.
number 5 on your printout.
Yeah.
So we just
Right,
added-
it would be
Income
number
restricted
5.
housing. Okay. Oh, but your point is to give them more money.
And well, Sandy has suggested that we take out what the incentives are. And we change it to provide further incentives to encourage the use of UAP.
Okay. Can we first make a statement that,
That we
That-
think affordable housing is important.
absolutely.
Yeah, okay.
As opposed to how much the
So
developer.
let's, Brian, would you please remove everything after the word incentives? Yeah.
Well, income restriction does not
Okay,
sufficiently
so
incentivize, well,
you're saying
well,
remove-
it does not. So you don't want to start with incentivize though, because you're already saying, the problem is we're not giving them enough to develop, as opposed to we are completely supporting the notion of.
Right.
The need for.
So I want to put that in at the beginning.
Yeah, absolutely.
But first, why don't you, delete from incentives to, provisions? Because really our point is, we want to encourage developers to do it. Because we want the units. But now, Brian, you want to go back to the old resolution and pull a sentence about, how our commitment to affordability? Because maybe there'll be, language that,
Or considering development, how about if we just start with this? We've got this nice sentence here, Manhattan Community Board 6 is formally on record as considering the development and preservation of affordable housing to be among our city's highest priorities.
yeah, I think that's what he's grabbing.
Oh, great.
So do we want both of these sentences or just?
Yes, I think just like that is good. Well, why don't you switch the order of those first two sentences?
Okay, well, first I'm gonna copy them over.
Okay. So he's taking language from the resolution that we approved and moving it into the new resolution.
So Rich, you're saying.
Yeah.
This sentence,
Because I want to lead with, Senator's concern.
Yeah, and then start it with not with income restricted housing, but just the title of affordable housing.
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
Okay.
And I think you can just close those up into one item. The 6 and 7.
No, think that should be separate.
Can we move that to like number
What?
1?
Yes, that has to be on the top. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Oh, and there's no question. That's how to
I'm
start it.
That is
I'm
the
fine.
last thing.
Yeah.
Making that number one?
But I'm a little concerned, the second part doesn't really go.
Yeah, I was gonna
first.
say, we just leave that as its own thing at the bottom.
Exactly,
Okay.
right, but the
It's just
affordable housing
different
has to be
points.
first.
So you put
So we want to make this 1 and 2.
No,
I think it's
well,
1 and 6.
1 and
yeah,
6, yeah.
thank you.
So. Affordable housing. This is the top. There's 1.
And we, sorry for like just dictating, but in that first one, will you please change the first one to, our board is concerned that the proposal does not. So it matches the others in the second sentence. No, down one, where it says the Coyo proposal,
On board.
our board is concerned that the Coyo proposal does not. Cause that's how we worded the other ones. Perfect. And then you go back to that last one. And make sure it looks good. Yeah, I guess call that income restricted housing. There's one other change I wanna make sure you don't forget to make, which is in item 6, pull out. Brook houses and Washington houses and just mention the ones that are in our district.
Could you go back to the one also on housing diversity? Oh, there it is. Oh, we did leave that. Okay, great, thank you.
Yeah, we took.
Yeah.
But
the
shouldn't
whole
we do,
thing.
that should be right under the 1, right? Shouldn't be, housing diversity goes
Yeah.
along with,
That's
yes, so you
okay.
wanna do
You want
Housing
housing diversity to be number 2.
2, right, and then
Yeah.
the rest are about whatever.
Yeah,
I have one other question. What about infrastructure? Where is the notion of development of infrastructure?
and you like to make sure the schools can handle new
Well, I
residents.
remember Larry at the meeting said, what about the sewers? I really liked his sewage comment. I
Yeah.
well, you know, I mean, very practical. The schools, the police, well, the police is not part of it. But certainly the schools, the libraries, the sewage, et cetera. Where is that addressed in that proposal? Should we be dealing with that?
Honestly, I don't think it will generate enough housing to impact any of those things.
That's a little sad. mean,
I know, it is
three
sad.
bedrooms with the 8 kids, are you kidding?
I mean, I'm actually curious how you feel about that.
Again, I do think zoning mandates how many schools you have. That's a city planning. I mean, it's a planning issue, but it's not something that zoning will dictate. It doesn't say, oh, for every X square feet of city, we need a school, or for every X square feet, we need. So it's maybe addressed in a different thing, not the zoning text.
This is a zoning thing.
That's correct, yeah.
So also then, there's no way that the developer then becomes, the developer becomes responsible for adding something to the community, like, well, you know, a community garden. I don't know how this works. Like, you're gonna build these big buildings, because we're gonna give you maybe ones, maybe not here. I'm a little confused about where that will happen. But, and I got the, sorry, the MIA, what is the MIA now? That area where they then build larger, here they're making it affordable, but they build larger somewhere else.
Yeah.
Is there some way that you then say, the deal is you build large buildings, you also add,
Amenities.
public, the
Yeah.
pops, the pops.
Yeah.
That's
There's a
what people want.
community facilities bonus. So if you incorporate a community facility in your building, you will get a bonus.
You get 2 more floors
I
in
think
my
it's-
opinion.
That becomes like a pot. that we do
Yeah.
that.
Okay,
Yeah.
it's complicated, but,
Yeah.
but yes, there is for community facilities, there is a.
But we don't put that in.
Well, that's already in the zoning.
Okay.
That's how the building across from me is 24 instead of 22 stories, because they designated the ground floor for
Where is
public
that? I
use.
must have missed
At
it.
20,
Fourth and third, where is it?
23rd and the third.
23rd?
Yeah. We got two buildings that have gone up.
The new one, there's only a new one that went up.
Yeah, on the southeast corner.
That's right.
Yeah.
What do they have?
I don't know what they have, but they got the community facility bonus. We know they did, because they got they got the height.
And, zonings can mandate certain things, like I believe the Slovia site, that's why the river school.
All right. Are we in a condition where we can vote on this? Because we have two more resolutions, which will go quick, but we still have to do. So the top hasn't changed.
Oh, yeah, no.
Yeah, that top is just
Change going.
how we got here. And then there's the therefore be it resolved. And the things we change are all on the next page. And we put affordable housing first, housing diversity second, the setbacks and bulk third and fourth. The landmark issue fifth. And then infill, which is Startown sixth, and income restricted housing seventh. And we're leaving the displacement in, it sounds like.
And we added in the same community.
We add community, yeah. Thank you for that.
And so even with those 7 things, we're still in, it's favorable.
We are favorable as of now.
I feel like that's like so much stuff.
It is a lot of
So it's
stuff.
hard for me to like look at it as something that's favorable when it's like missing so much.
I mean, the language, if you scroll up to the very end before the therefore. The language that Majed and I came up with is, although we remain concerned about some specific resources in the judgment of our board. Its shortcomings and risks are overwhelmingly outweighed by its likely positive impact on the quality of housing. Which did seem to be the vibe that came out of land use.
It says including income restricted housing. Like, do you agree with that?
Do I agree that it will create income restricted, enough income restricted to be worth doing?
Yeah, because I feel like just going by everything I've heard in the past few months, it seems to stop at the quantity of available housing and the income restricted housing is,
Would you,
that's what's MIA.
and that's what we're
And-
adding.
Yeah,
Would you pull
right.
that phrase out?
I mean, I would pull the including income restricted housing because
Yeah,
I don't really see much, like, there's no really promise of that, right? It's.
I know. It's just a possibility, but not a commitment.
Right.
I don't object to pulling that out.
Did you pull it like from including onwards?
Yes, yes.
I'm good with that. Cause like, I do think to your point, like, sure, we have like 7 things we want them to fix, but I think it still is net positive.
Mm.
Like, that's my view, and like, you think about the whole proposal, it's very long, right? So 7 isn't a lot in the sense of the whole proposal. So I think, to me, it's like you removing after including onwards works, and I think it is still positive.
Yeah, Brian, will you pull that out? We're basically, we're not willing to say that it solves the income restricted housing problem.
Could we put that in as a separate comment that our concerns remain?
Well, we have it,
It's
it's down below.
included, it's
It's
included,
down in the discussion.
the last one.
Right, no, I understand, but the whereases, what are the whereases doing? In general, but if you're raising this, what are we putting in those?
The whereases here are essentially setting the stage.
No, I see your concerns.
Sandy, did I understand correctly that anything that involves rezoning, there's the MIH?
Well, what, I mean, for instance, Spark, which is being rezoned, it has now mandatory MIH. And the way it was explained was that any major rezoning now must have MIH.
And that still applies with this, the city of Yes?
It doesn't change it.
It's something that you're saying is enforced by the city council and DCG before they will agree to something,
Right.
even though it's not in the law.
And that's, I mean, I don't know if there is a law.
Yeah.
I'm going from, we asked, why are you, Spark has no residential, why are you doing it? It's mandated that they had to
Yeah,
include it because it's a major rezone.
And so they changed their plans and now there is,
No, they have, if they build any residential, it will have mandatory inclusionary housing.
oh, if it's
If they do.
residential.
Yeah.
It's so complicated. It's
Yeah.
confusing.
I mean, it,
But because it's not residential, they
It
don't
doesn't
have that.
yeah.
It doesn't
And we
make,
still lose like 800.
Oh, I have good news though.
Oh.
I mean, I was saving it for new business, but
sorry.
they are, CUNY is saving the dorm rooms. They are leasing dorm space elsewhere, moving all of the students at the same rent. So those students keep the same rent. And when those dorm rooms are reoccupied by new students, they'll pay a higher rent, but still way below market. They'll increase it by about 50%.
It's huge.
Yeah.
Where, do you know?
It's in Midtown. There was a
Oh,
new story
here,
today.
So,
that-
okay, okay.
Brian, Van Nieuwenhoven, who is no longer on the board, but still involved in all of this, sent me just before the meeting,
Different
so.
Brian.
I can tell you, Danny News.
actually, Michelle and I received a presentation from CUNY.
Oh, so you already knew about it?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes, and it's in the hotel that, it was Morris Lapidus as the architect. But, I believe it's at 51st and Lexington, so it's in our district.
Oh,
oh,
yeah.
it's in a like, architecturally significant building.
Well, it's a 50s modernist.
I like those.
I like it, yes. So it is in our district, and it's walkable to both Hunter and to where the school nursing is.
I think I've passed it. Does it starts with like an F,
It's got-
founder or
it's got-
something? Yeah, okay, okay.
All right, are we ready to move this? Cause we got two more.
Oh,
They'll be easy, but compared to this, but we do have them.
I'm gonna ask the same question one more time. Okay, so anything rezoning, if it's residential, it has the mandatory inclusion. I'm just trying to see where that stands with this, cause that's so big for me, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure that's quite the description I would say of
Okay,
how to describe it, but, yes, if it includes residential, it will have mandatory inclusionary.
including under city of, yes, housing opportunity.
It doesn't,
This doesn't
I
change
don't believe it affects that.
Okay,
and that's
Okay.
already set as some, and there are specific rules about that.
It's,
We really should do a follow-up with DPC, because I am not a zoning expert, I don't know.
but it's definitely been the case in the big rezonings that have happened.
It has.
okay. That helps.
Okay, I'm not allowed to make a motion, I'm just saying.
Motion to vote.
Now I've been waiting for this for an hour.
And I'm not allowed to second a motion either.
Second,
All right. Brian will, administer the
Great,
pain.
we'll now take, now that the motion has been made and seconded, we'll now take a vote on a resolution expressing a favorable recommendation on the proposed City of Yes for Housing Opportunity Zoning Text Amendment Package. When your name is called, please answer in favor, opposed, abstain, or not entitled. I'll conduct the vote by roll call and declare the results of the vote. Kyle Tide and Eric Goldberg are not here. Ned Kalani,
In favor.
thank you. Sandra Leftoff,
In favor.
thank you. Rich Smith,
In favor.
thank you. Marion Ruth,
Still opposed, sorry, but it passes.
Tell me why you're still opposed.
I just don't have a good feeling about it. I'm very curious about this rezoning and the mandated inclusion housing stuff, like. What's gonna happen to, like,
Yeah.
yeah, all of these buildings, great, yes, we do need more housing, but. The affordable housing parts, I'm not sold. that this
Yeah,
is
I'm
gonna
worried
solve
about that too. I just, tell me what, can I stay neutral?
Wait, can we, yeah,
Is there a neutral category?
No,
no,
You either
because
have
if
to-
you were to abstain, that would essentially count against it. So it amounts to the same
Yeah.
as the vote in
I mean, I
opposition.
have the concerns that you have. I don't really get it and and I'm really afraid of how this is gonna get, used in general and how real estate then just sort of cashes in on the whole thing. The whole thing makes me very uncomfortable.
well,
Yeah.
let me ask, just from a parliamentary point of view. If we only get 2 yes votes, the resolution does not go to the full board.
that's right.
Okay,
And so it would be helpful if we got 3 yes votes so that it could go to the full board,
Right.
because if it doesn't, we will express no opinion to DCB as a board
when would this come up?
tomorrow.
But the public comments come up, you have till July,
Yes,
right?
But
they're happy to get public
And,
comments.
and the
Right.
reason we're voting on this is
Yeah.
because I will need to vote at Borough Board along with all 12 boards in Manhattan. So that the borough can have, a kind of consistent view. So I really want something that I can say, yes, our board agrees or disagrees. So that's why it's coming up now.
So if this
And the
is,
other thing is, sorry, we adjourned for the summer.
right,
So we would miss our opportunity to have any fun.
Yeah, yeah, I've been quite hurt. Quite honestly, I think we've had so little time to deal with this. I think this is, for me, it's the most important issue that I feel the board has dealt with. I mean, this is a major issue for life here in the city, and it's all about many race, class, et cetera. It's what I put so much value in. And I do have very mixed feelings that, what the city planning does, et cetera. And I feel, quite honestly, we've not had the proper counter voices here. The people who work on tenants' rights. We've never heard from any of those folks. I want to know how they have thought through this, what their concerns are. We've heard from the city and they've got their own investment in it. And that makes me very uncomfortable. I mean, Furman Center is really reassuring. But there's Housing Data Coalition, a great group of people working on the data itself. But also the various groups, ANHD and so on. We haven't heard from any of those people who are actually doing, the work, the concerns about tenants. That makes me very uncomfortable.
Well, and just,
Yeah.
if it helps, the people who presented today were the New York Housing Conference,
Dave Waters, I know that girl.
AARP, NYU Furman Center, a professor, principal of AR Area Design and Research, the Delane Companies, Open Plans, Regional Plan Association, Citizens Housing Planning Council.
How about ANHD, did we name?
Sorry?
I'll take my mask off, sorry, I didn't have my, ANHD, were they there?
No.
Let me
Okay.
see if they're on record.
Who else?
And one of the things that came up today
Yeah,
is the good thing about this proposal, it's citywide. And so they've actually developed things that are for low density and for high density. One of the things that people felt was incredibly positive is taking away the parking mandate. There were examples of proposals where, they had to have 2 parking spaces per apartment. And they they wouldn't allow them to go any lower. You know, what they're saying is that people say they want affordable housing, but then they do all these things to make it impossible to do. So taking away the parking is probably very controversial in other boroughs.
Yeah.
But, it's a great way to reduce the cost of building housing. The other thing is they noted is that a lot of the, like the ADUs, the auxiliary dwelling units already exist. And what it's going to do is allow them to become utilized. So, and they can then, you know, be up to code and people can legitimately rent them. They can, if they have a concern with their landlord, it gets documented. So there's some things that are part of this that are great. That people really are advocating.
And which is great, right? I mean, and I don't know what goes on in the out of hours, as they say, right? I don't understand that. I think about where we are now and what the implications of it are, and I really do hear class-based, you know, I hear class being an issue that only gets more dramatic, and we will sit, where we live is, you know, a very wealthy community.
Yeah.
And I feel that that's what we do, we run the risk of merely increasing that, of not, you know, and I don't trust the rest of it, and that's what I find.
Well, and then maybe what you have to think about is how is this different than the current system? Is this any different? Is
I
it-
don't particularly see it, I see
So
it as,
we
yeah,
have the
it's-
current system
yeah,
and we're doing something that maybe doesn't improve, but doesn't decrease the current system.
well, I actually hear it, I mean, I know, like this thing of the commercial spaces being turned into single. I hear, you know, they, you know, the commercial spaces, and then they have the shared kitchens and so on, that design. And I hear that as really, really pandering to the professionals coming into the young professionals.
Why do you?
Why? I mean, because that's how they discussed it at the planning board. In fact, that's exactly
Well,
what
except-
planning said.
Except they said like any of these things, they need to do, someone needs to maintain it. So for instance, there's models all across Europe
Yeah,
of people who do not, it's not young professionals. And, you know, co-op housing, very popular.
True, I know.
co-op housing is terrific. If they
That's what
talk-
could be then built.
Well,
with
it's-
this
yeah.
system.
But that's not how they talk about it. You know, the old, you
But
know, that's,
I mean, that's because you lack imagination. It's not that
No.
it's not possible. It will, I mean, it will be possible with this new zoning, and it hasn't been previously. So if you can only think about young professionals, that's just because you're not being creative.
go listen to that tape and hear what he said, because that's exactly what he said.
So, and
And that's
actually, it
when I
wasn't,
asked him, I said, how do you know that there's so many young professionals?
Sandra, sorry, it wasn't a man, it was a woman who presented. City planning was Ali.
I think we're getting down a
Yeah,
road.
let's not get into that too
Yeah.
much. But, so that's my concerns, in general, that's my concern.
Yeah. Except for that, I think, again, I really want to see us pass this, so we get to full board, so we let people decide. But,
That's fair.
If this is a joint resolution and like land use has voted on it.
Well, land use has not voted on this text. They voted on the favorable. But not on, they have not actually voted on this resolution yet, because we're the ones who are bringing it.
Oh, I didn't realize that. I thought they already
Yeah.
voted and then we were just like.
They voted on the original one.
Yeah, they voted on the original.
No, they voted on this one that you recently
Yes,
sent.
yes, and they voted for a favorable and instructed me and Majed to write a resolution, which is what
Okay.
this is, but they,
So my friend at ANHD just texted me back
yeah.
and he says,
Very good.
I don't think we've publicly said yes to it.
They haven't said anything. They
Yeah,
really pushed
so
for the
nothing.
commercial, rezoning. And are celebrating it, but they didn't, they haven't spoken on this.
do we know why?
He's checking their website, which is what you've been doing.
Yeah, he's
so
not gonna find
if-
anything,
yeah,
'cause
if
I
you
can't
don't
find
see it, then.
I mean, the
Okay.
only other way to think about this is we pass it on to the general board, but we have a fair and open discussion about what the conflicts are.
Honestly, I'd be happy to do that,
Okay,
yeah.
and then you have something to bring back, but it's not, you know, shoo-in.
Yeah, I don't think it's gonna be an issue, and I
That's
think we're gonna talk
fine,
about it.
that's fine, and that one I would vote yes.
And just so long as we understand, if we don't pass
Yeah.
something, if this doesn't pass at full board, It means we will have no comment from CD6.
Okay,
But if there's enough negative comment, then will that get presented? Say
No,
it passes.
if we haven't, I mean, unfortunately, just the way it works, like we can revise the resolution. But if it does not pass, we have no comment.
Oh, no, but here's the other version of it is, it passes the, 26 to 24, right? So it's a controversial one. So does that, can you make use of that? Here's what the concerns are. It was.
If the concerns are in the resolution,
Oh, you can only deal with what's in.
what's in the resolution?
But those concerns can be communicated as public comment up through July.
Right, absolutely. But you know, it's in our bylaws, CBC speaks through our resolutions. We need a resolution,
Okay,
one way or the other.
all
So,
right, I'm gonna vote yes.
okay,
Well, you heard every negative that I've said, and I, you know, and.
I mean,
You know,
look, you've been very earnest in your
Yeah, I am.
participation,
This is-
and it's much appreciated.
I'm gonna only tell you, you know, I teach at the college, and I'm teaching from the heart of these kids, and I can't sell them out, and I feel like I'm doing that. And that's,
Understood.
Yeah.
you know, it's very painful for me.
You can propose that we change it to a negative at full board.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, so would you please conclude the vote and report the results?
Yes. Thank you. So since you, Sandra, maintained your in favor vote, we have.
Great reservations, reservation.
We have
Great reservations.
3 in favor, 1 opposed, 0 abstaining, and 0 abstaining for cause of not entitled, so the motion passed.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for spirited discussion. We do have 2 more resolutions, but I don't think they will be controversial.
Oh, no.
And-
No.
And no one is allowed to leave because then we will lose quorum. So let's just run through these. The first one is the Community Land Act. 2 meetings ago, we had a presentation about the Community Land Act, which supports tenant purchase, nonprofit purchase, public land sale to nonprofits rather than for-profit developers, and the ending of selling tax liens for profit. And it has a wide coalition of support, including several of our electeds. And we responded favorably to the presentation when they came to us. And I don't expect this is controversial either in committee or in full board.
And if I have one comment.
Yeah.
If MSBI does leave our neighborhood, I think we should propose that the city take back the property and we go through
And we administer it as a,
as a public land trust.
oh.
Yeah.
And it would be community, it would be we have it, yeah, a co-op, and it would be, and then the basement would be the kitchen.
Whatever.
Not that I'm blocking the word for, what was it, we have it's a, what those.
Campings.
The commercial space would be, we use that word, or basically, you know, a building that's run in a communal sense.
So,
Yeah, come up with the, you know, yeah, like the old one in wherever was the Bronx.
Yeah.
And apparently they are, anyway,
Yeah, all right,
there
never
are
mind.
models.
so is anyone willing to make a motion on this resolution?
I'll make a motion.
Okay,
Second.
okay,
Okay.
Brian?
The motion's been made and seconded. Now, one question I just have, since we're using the word endorses. We want to change the title to endorses.
We use the word endorse in the material, yes, I would change the word at the top to endorses, thank you. Endorsing is stronger and more directive to our electeds.
So a motion has been made and seconded, on the resolution endorsing the Community Land Act. When your name is called, please answer in favor, opposed, abstain for cause of untitled. So again, Kyle Thai, Goldberg, Willius Rednick, are with us. Ned?
In favor.
Thank you. Sandra Left,
In favor.
thank you. Richmond,
In favor.
thank you. Marion,
In favor.
thank you. So with 4 in favor, 0 opposed, 0 abstaining, and 0 abstaining for caution not entitled, the motion passed.
Okay. Let's move the agenda to the next resolution, which will be even, I think, even less controversial. And if that's even possible, the context here is that we have been asked to join other community boards in endorsing a budget proposal called Homes Now that came out of the city council that would allocate funding for helping to financially support the growth of affordable housing through programs. They would essentially increase the funding for programs that HPD operates now that help nonprofits and community organizations build housing through low interest loans and other tax benefits. And the reason this is coming to us today is that we have been asked to sign on, the executive committee has been asked to sign on to the letter of support that will be going to the mayor at some point in the next 2 weeks. And so what the resolution does is it says that we endorse that budget allocation for affordable housing, and we direct the executive committee through our staff to communicate our endorsement by signing that.
And same question, we're endorsing.
I endorse this one.
You should vote. Okay. A motion has been made and seconded on a resolution endorsing the Homes Now allocation of the city budget. If the name is called, please answer in favor, opposed, abstain for caution not entitled. So, Andy Kyle, Maybe Shredder with us. Nad, Kalan,
In favor.
you. Sandra Left,
In favor.
you. Richmond,
In favor.
you. Marion, Wu.
In favor.
Thank you. With 4 in favor, 0 opposed, 0 abstaining, 0 abstaining for caution not entitled, the motion passes.
Thank you. I'm gonna waive my chair's report and we are gonna pass on old new business because we did our new business up front. Looking around, seeing no objections, I hereby declare this meeting adjourned at 8:14 PM. Thank you, everyone, for sticking it up.
Thank you. And, you know, we have to vote on this tomorrow night, so do any research.
Yeah.
And,
It's not gonna be in the English I speak, I'll tell you